So welcome everyone. Very happy to be here and see this huge audience, and I'm just joking. So today we will talk about the latest technological innovation and development in the messaging landscape. We have few experts here. We have Sam, we have Ira, we have Manan, and we have Tim. Maybe if you guys give a very short introduction of each other.
Yeah, no problem. Sam Barker, Head of Analytics Forecasting at Juniper Research, and I'm an analyst that looks into the telco space.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ira Cohen. I'm Vice President of Business Development and Marketing for MD Smart. We're very heavily involved in A2P messaging and wholesale voice and wholesale SMS, and I'm happy to be here.
You?
Hi, I'm Man Mohan, General Manager Messaging for Globe Tele Services, a decade-old company which is into products and solutions for enterprise and operators.
And last but not least, Tim.
Good morning, Tim Ward, and my apologies for not being there in person. However, hopefully we can carry on as usual, virtually. Responsible for sales and marketing within XConnect, which is a Sonos company. We're providing information to the message aggregation, hubbing, A2P marketplace to assist with routing and validation of the numbers that are being used for addressing.
Thank you. So guys, let's start with the first nasty question about this topic. So what do you think is the latest technological innovation in our industry? Who wants to take over this question from you guys?
I can start with that. I actually we've been looking at this carefully the last couple of years, and there are three clear trends I think that are affecting the business, and that there are innovations happening there that are affecting the entire landscape. The first that obviously everyone's going to mention here is AI and the ability to use data to improve the service that we're providing. This is on the wholesale side, on the connectivity side. But I think what's really exciting to us is actually on the value proposition for enterprises, because we're now able to take the AI that comes out from the messaging and look at consumer trends and look at usage cases and be able to put that in and then build that into the software that we're already providing within the API to provide better conversion rates for customers who are using that. And then everybody who's using our messaging services are trying to get something to happen. They're trying to get some result at the end. That we can improve the click-through rates, that we can improve how the end result of those messaging campaign, then that's providing tremendous value to our clients and to the marketplace. So taking that AI and putting it together with other data that we've got, and again, we're a service provider. We don't even know the people. We just know the performance of the telephone number and how that telephone number behaves. A second one, and I know that my friend from GTS is going to say this as well, is the blockchain.
Yeah.
And the use of blockchain as a fraud prevention. We are now encrypting SMS using blockchain, which is something that if you told me that we'd be using blockchain in telecom 5 years ago, I said you're crazy because no one will accept it. But we're able to prevent and preserve the sender ID using blockchain technology, which is something that is incredible. And I think that we're going to see a lot more of that used across the industry. And I think I'll stop with that and let my fellow panelists.
I think Ira has very much correctly said when it comes to the AI and processing the data and for the user acquisitions, or maybe for the better user experience for the end users and all, rather than bombarding them with the spams and the what they actually don't need, and just giving them the messages which they on the platform on the means that they actually are acceptable to them, be it plain SMS or OTT messaging and all. So blockchain is just another thing that is a disruptive technology, so in a positive way. Apart from that, the new innovations have come into RCS IP messaging and push notifications as well. So with the SMS pricing globally being very high, I think these are the innovations which are very much required to basically have a sort of a base platform for the pricing, the user experience, and for the client acquisition or client, better conversion ratios for the enterprises. So, I mean, every enterprise has their budget. They don't want to actually, be using high expensive SMS. They want better technologies to come, better means of communication. So yeah, RCS, IP messaging, push notifications, and AI to process the raw data to reach out to their end user, the customer base. So these are the new innovations, and they are very much required in this industry.
Sam, you that come from a research company, do you want to add here something, maybe something else? What do you
I think
see coming up?
I think one of the biggest things I'm seeing in messaging, and it's more along the rich media messaging, something to go back, Ira said about AI, is customer data platforms. And I think that's something that we're going to see more and more over the next 4 to 5 years, but it's very much along the rich media messaging side of things. So collecting data and when people are more receptive to messaging, what the content is, and eventually I think it'll move towards the chatbot area of things where you have opportunities for things like upselling or essentially allowing enterprises to monetize more and more of what the message content is, and direct and indirectly.
May I speak on that artificial intelligence, because you all mentioned that. I mean, artificial intelligence is mentioning more and more in the messaging landscape, but that's not an easy piece of technology, right? So is this not only for the big ones? I mean, to listen to voice calls or to understand, I don't know, in a certain dialect of a certain language, the content which comes through an audio file into the messaging channel, and then to analyze the content and then process something out. I mean, let's face it, if you don't have 1,000 PhDs, are companies like in the messaging industry normally able and capable actually to fight this here? Maybe Tim, you have an input here? What do you think?
Well, I mean, the AI side is one part of it, and I'd sort of pick up on a comment that Ira made on knowing where calls have come from. If there's a big change that we have seen in our business, normally we're providing information that helps people determine where a message is going to, the success and how it actually gets to the destination. The big change we've probably seen in this last year is much more of a focus on where a message comes from, in making sure that that information is actually correct, in making sure that it's recognized by the recipient, because that's another piece. You've actually got to connect those things up. It's great knowing it's correct and accurate, but who cares if it's a number you don't recognize? So it's very important that you've got that recognition of where that information is coming from. So, we're seeing sort of sets of tools of new information. And I kind of have this little bit of an argument about AI. I mean, trying to always being intelligent about things only works if you've got good data in the first place. You've actually got to know stuff. You've got to know things about those numbers. Then you can start to be smart about how you use that information. So, some really basic things like just, does the person who's sending this message have the right to use that identity or that number? Then you can go a sort of step further and say, well, okay, you start to register those things dynamically, have sort of sender identity registries. And obviously this is something that the MEF have been very active with in the UK and a couple of other countries. And then you kind of move on to some of these technologies like Stir Shaken and the concept of more real-time registries, registering who sent what, when, and connecting together both the origin and the destination. Now, none of those were particularly AI-based. They're actually very much information-based, just making sure you've got the base information before you start. So I think in terms of those innovations, I think, you've got to start from the right place and then apply intelligence on top of that.
Maybe what do you say? Yes, you need good data before you can run any artificial intelligence on top of it. But I want to be here.
I wanted to comment on your question.
Yes, exactly. So regarding back to the question.
There's a concept.
So is artificial intelligence, because it's really a buzzword. I hear that again and again, and sometimes, just because you have a smart workflow does not mean that it's artificial intelligence. If a human being designed it. Really, artificial intelligence, as this example, what I said, if it's a voice call analyzing in real time, are we able to play a role? What do you think? Or is this really just a field which belongs to Amazon, Google, Facebook, Apple, of this world, Microsoft?
Well, one of the changes has been in the landscape is that the technology barrier is much, much lower at the moment. And so there are many, many tools available for you to implement these things without being Google, Amazon, et cetera. And the truth is, we don't call it AI internally. We call it data processing. You can call it whatever you want, but I'll give you an example. We don't, as I said, we don't know the customer, but we know how that number behaves. So more or less, we know when they're reading their messages. We know when they're not reading their messages, which is important. We know where they are at different times of the day or if they travel. We know which messages they click on and which messages they don't click on. So if they're parts of loyalty clubs, he's in the Zara loyalty club and he also flies on British Airways. He never clicks on the British Airways links that he gets, but he always clicks on the Zara. Okay, and this number also buys sweaters in March. So I know this information about this person, and I can then build what they call marketing, a persona about this telephone number and its behavior. I also know which banks it uses. Okay, so I know that if it's all of a sudden getting a request for information from Deutsche Bank and they work with Lloyd's of London, okay, we know that there's something wrong with this message also, and we can use that for part of the fraud prevention policy. So the technology barrier is much lower today, and you don't know, we're a very small company relatively, and if you get a couple of data scientists on your staff and they could build these models, the question then becomes, what queries am I asking the data? And that becomes the key part.
But if I may enter this question as well, is this really new technology? I mean, analyzing data. I mean, data mining is a buzzword what was roaming around 25 years ago already. So it's now what we put, just data mining on are we mixing up now data mining and artificial intelligence? To understand buying profile, that's for me data mining. Get out. However you process that with machine learning, whatever. But for me, intelligence means, act like a human being. Like we are communicating. I can hear you. I can interpret. That's for me real intelligence. And that's back to this question: do we have a chance, or is this just a field that we have to give up and we must buy from the big ones, which can afford all these PhDs, the army of what we need for our handling?
I think data mining, data mining is not a new thing, but has it been effectively used? Call it AI or call it, data processing. I would actually combine the statements what Tim and Ira has mentioned, that yes, we have to know the customer behavior, what that number does and all, and definitely we have the data. So I mean, we can have the customer, having like a digital proof or so that they are actually interested in XYZ promotion for a retail sector, and then whenever they are traveling, that AI, the data processing, can actually help them with the new discounts or with the new airlines or the new, the hotels and all, which they are interested in, depending upon the region they are. So your data mining might not be new, but the effective use is just coming, and it's not limited to Amazon's or Google's. The aggregators, and they are also in it, and it can be actually it has been developed, and it has been developed as well. So it can be used in many ways as well. It can be used for, say, consent management to stop the frauds and the spams. Means if XYZ users don't want promotions from Zara, they want it from H&M, just have them for promotion from where they are loyalty based or not. Might be traveling to Europe and have the promotion for XYZ region. So yes, effective use of the technology. That's
okay. Okay, thank you guys. So what I'm very much interested to hear from you is, are you seeing some disruptive technology coming up, at the horizon? What I mean with that, 3 years ago, who knew on TikTok, and look today, that's for me disruptive, and don't come with RCS because it's 15 years old technology. It's disruptive, comes overnight, not over a decade, right? So sorry that I put that in. So what do you think is disruptive right now? What do you see? Do you see something? Is there some disruptors?
As mentioned by Ira, I would say blockchain has been a positive disruptive technology, wherein it's come from the regulatory, and India being one of the biggest consumer market has been effectively put to use. Yes, there are. It has been like 70-80%. It has been effective. There is a minimal gap for that, and yes, company.
But it's only effective for local India traffic.
Local Indian traffic, but yeah, there is a minor gap for which we are also going to fill up with the authentication consent management, which is enterprise based. But yeah, blockchain has been a disruptive technology wherein it has allowed the end users not to have these spams and all the messages and the promotional, which is just not required by them.
So you say disruptiveness can be also something like you can prevent, let's say, fraud and
Fraud,
spam.
spam, you know,
Okay.
and it's a digital ledger, you know, and it can be verified by an operator or the enterprise. So
Yeah, something else, what comes in your mind? What could
Yeah,
be really disruptive?
I'm going to do disruptive technologies that are negatively affecting our industry if we don't wake up. One is flash calling, which is being used for OTP. And the second one is the Google, Apple, Microsoft agreement to find alternate technologies to using SMS for OTP. I can't tell the people in this room or the people in this industry how important OTP, the revenue from OTP is to this industry. And if there are technologies that are going to come that are going to affect that OTP revenue, then the industry is going to stagnate and it's going to go the voice route. There are things that we need to do to prevent those from happening. And one of them is obviously bringing trust back into the channel by finding blockchain or whatever other technology. And so people, they won't need to look for other technologies for the OTP traffic. And that needs to be something that we as an industry need to take going forward for the next 2-3 years, because the threat was at the door, now it's in the door.
I would partly disagree in that. I would agree actually, yes, on the technology blockchain. But why I would partly disagree is because these technologies like RCS, you know, they're actually very much required. And it's not like actually you can send any message. It has to be approved, or the IP messaging, it is based on the user handset. And with the commercials of the SMS, normal SMS, plain vanilla SMS going so high, the enterprises are looking for these innovations to, still connect to there and pass the information to the end users in an effective manner. So these technologies are, flash call. I would actually minorly agree, but yes, I mean, see, it's the enterprise who are asking for such solutions, and we have to actually find the new innovations.
But you know, he's right on one end. Disruptive means that it can cause change, you know, overnight. And let's say if all of a sudden all the OTPs goes over voice and you don't have any SMS traffic, that's rather disruptive, I would say. So I mean, negative, but it is, you know, that's a game changer. That's what is with disruptiveness meant.
I think
I think SMS is not going to go. I'm myself actually plain vanilla SMS is something which I really like. It's one of my favorites. I mean, call it vanilla, call it anything, but everybody loves vanilla. I've not seen anyone hating. I mean, it's just these channels, new channels, they add on the value to it. I mean, 100%, it's no delivery. I mean, can't guarantee 100% deliveries or the conversion ratios on these channels. So SMS is going to stay. I would like the operators or the operators to have a model, pricing model, wherein of OTPs, which are the criticals and time-bound source of messaging, to have different pricing than the transactional and the promotional ones,
okay,
so that it makes sense.
Sorry if I interrupted, but now I would really like to talk about disruptiveness. That's
sorry.
You're far away of pricing and everything, so you're shifting away. So Tim, do you have anything? What do you think? It's a really disruptive.
So it's always difficult to say really disruptive, but kind of one thing which I think is changing in a big way is we've seen so much traffic which is send and forget. You know, it is the one-time codes. It's just transmit. It's just information that's being provided to an end user. So if there's one thing that is going through a transformation, I think it's that move to conversational messaging, where you're really engaging with the person at the other end. And I think that might be what we're going to see as an evolution of this messaging marketplace, where it really has been a broadcast mechanism. Probably 90%, more than 90% of the traffic is still in this broadcast mode. But I think it's going to be the growth of the conversational traffic, which is what changes the rules, because that's then allowing an absolute direct interaction between the brand and the user.
So you think that disruptiveness, in your point of view, means that what might be we can lose with OTP can be recovered with this conversational traffic?
That is my eternal optimism, that there's always, once one thing goes away, something else comes in.
There's nothing wrong to be an optimist.
No.
Sam, what do you say? Maybe from a research point of view, maybe outlook of a few years, what do you think there is there some disruptive technology raising up?
I think flash calling is the most disruptive element that's going to hit the messaging space. But I don't think what's been mentioned yet is operators are in a position where they feel that they're going to lose this OTP SMS traffic. Many of them, looking down the avenue, why not monetize it in a similar way that they do to A2P SMS? At the moment, essentially where the flash call works, instead of getting an SMS with a 6-digit code, you get a phone call from a virtual number, essentially, and either the last 6 digits or random 6 digits within that number act as the authentication code. On Android, there you have access to the missed call register, which means you don't even need to know what the code is. It just does it automatically.
Right.
But in the similar way, we've got SMS firewalls that look for grey route traffic for telcos. People are now looking at upgrading their voice firewalls to identify this flash calling traffic. And from an enterprise's point of view, I don't think if you can charge a similar amount for an A2P voice message or an A2P SMS message, what's the difference to them? I mean, from a user standpoint, flash calling is easier. I think it's more a case of trust, and do operators go down the route of monetizing this traffic, or do they go down the route of blocking the traffic? What's going to provide the best return on investment? My opinion is monetizing it. I think it's the easiest way of going about it. I think the large telcos can go about looking at how this traffic is delivered, essentially, once you can identify it in the same way that they did for grey route traffic.
Your phone needs a mobile or Wi-Fi connection.
That's artificial intelligence.
Right there.
That's really disruptive. So thank you very much, Sam. What I would like to know from you guys, what do you think, who drives innovation in the messaging market? Are these the operators, or are these the messenger channels like Telegram, WhatsApp, and so on? Who is really driving innovation?
Neither.
So you think Telegram is not innovative?
Telegram is innovative if I'm a drug dealer or whatever, not necessarily for. Look, it was mentioned before, two-way messaging. Tim mentioned this. The conversational dialogue with customers is the major change that we're undergoing. We all are providing two-way platforms today, and the ability to get value from that two-way platform. But that was not an innovation that came from within this industry. That came from the chat apps. That came from WhatsApp. That came from it came from Google. It came from Amazon. It didn't come from us. Within the industry, I think that the innovation has to come for the ones who are providing the actual last mile service, and that's the service providers like we are. Because we're the ones who are listening to the actual customer who's using the product and seeing the value from it. And we're the ones who say, okay, these are the type of things that we need to change in order to do that, which is how we came to use blockchain to secure sender ID, to make sure that we're blocking out spam from the major banks and the major financial players. That's how we came to it, because we saw what was going on in the industry. That's how we came to providing tools that improve the chance of conversion at the end of the messaging, at the end of the funnel. At the end, the company that's sending that message wants to achieve a certain ROI from their messaging. And so we put in all these tools. You can track We, by the way, can track conversion, by the way, on WhatsApp today and on Viber. We can track it through the two-way conversational dialogue, and we can provide tools to optimize their campaigns. One of the great things, and people forget to say this when they talk to enterprises, the value of it. You can run advertising, you can put television and magazines and movies and whatever you want and online, but the one channel that gets the quickest response, and you know how well your campaign is going, is text messaging. You know within 90 seconds if your marketing campaign is working. The only channel you can provide. And so you can take a campaign and you can optimize it in real time while it's happening. Then you can say, okay, this is working, let's change this, let's do A/B testing, let's do 5 different, which is what we provide our customers. That's where the innovation is coming from.
So you think that our industry actually is driving the innovation, and not so much the messenger channels, the new ones, the threats, the so-called threats of our industry?
I'm saying that we should be providing it. So not necessarily have we done it in the past. That's where it should be coming.
I mean, I wonder if I could kind of add to that, because I think sort of when we were talking about this question, I kind of felt, well, it's certainly not the channels, it's not the technology that delivers that is innovating in this space, but it is the brands. I think the brands themselves are the drivers. They are the, well, actually the guy who pay the bill, which is probably the way we should look at it. But the brands themselves are the ones who are looking for new ways to engage with their customers. And I think it kind of comes down to what Ira's talking about, in that there's one part that we can do to help them. We can show them what's possible, but it's actually got to be them asking the questions, asking us what is possible, what can be done. What are the ways that that engagement can be increased, improved, developed upon. And I kind of look at some of the things that your phone or that my phone is doing now. When I just log into Google without actually asking for a page or a web page, Google actually does a pretty good job of putting up a list of items that I might be interested in. And it's distinctly driven by what it knows I've searched for, what it knows I've looked at. Now, that's very much a handset, or sorry, a Google technology displayed on my handset. But it is very much that piece that says, here's an innovation that causes me to engage with a number of those things, because they first of all worked out what I'm interested in, and secondly, given me a means of communicating back with those brands. So that I think it's that brand-driven requirement, but it's our job to enable it.
Okay, thanks a lot, Tim.
I'll add one point to that, and the contextual awareness of where the person is and what the person is doing. That's something, by the way, that we as messaging providers can actually provide, because we know where they are and what they're doing, usually.
How do bots change the messaging landscape? What do you think? What is your opinion? Do they play a role, bots, or?
I mean,
Take this one.
SMS technology is obviously very, very old, and in terms of the content that can be delivered, obviously it's very, very limited. Chatbots are obviously a big way of doing it. You see quite a lot on the web these days, and obviously backed by AI. But in the future, we've seen a lot of uptake from OTT apps, a few years ago now, and they are becoming more and more commonplace in what they can do and what they offer. I think users are becoming more and more comfortable using them as well. But I think from an enterprise's point of view, especially companies like who are e-commerce players, retailers, chatbots can't be the be all and end all. It's just another channel in which they can contact their consumers, in the same way that SMS can be and email can be. So I think chatbots it's all down to user preference, really. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people who are more and more comfortable using chatbots in the future, but you're always going to need other channels alongside chatbots to make sure that they can that users' preferences are catered to. Essentially, it's the omni-channel retail model.
Okay, somebody wants to add something on that, on the bots? No? Maybe we go slowly but surely to the last question, and we have this half an hour panel done. What about machine-to-machine communication? Does and will messaging play a role in machine-to-machine? And can it save us,
It's interesting because when you think of machine-to-machine communications, I always think of things like really advanced factories or manufacturing and engineering or training. But when you look at what machine-to-machine will look like in 5 years, the vast majority of these these connections, these SIM cards that will be sending data or messages, are going to be the low power guys that don't need that constant connection. It's not going to be using 4G or 5G or even 3G. It's going to be using those new technologies like LTM and NB-IoT. And to save data or to save, be more cost effective, rather than sending data which can be quite costly, they simply just send one SMS a day or maybe one SMS an hour. And obviously that does count towards an operator's monetizable opportunities. But it's, again, for the end user's point of view, it's much more cost effective to use an SMS to send data which can be encrypted. Be sending it from a remote location. Good example is always agriculture, where in the US we have these massive super farms where it's spread out across many acres, and the idea is that they don't have to monitor it manually. It's all done remotely. You stick a low power device in the ground, battery lasts for 10 years. Was it 10 years? I'm not going to be able to do the maths on the top of my head, but think how many SMSs that that device is going to be sending over the 10 years if they have to do one day, and then think about how many SIM card based sensors they need over how many hectares. It does add up quite quickly.
And they're sending low bits.
Exactly, yeah. So it does have a role to play in machine to machine in the future, for sure.
I agree. I think that there's the role to play. I don't see it affecting our industry as much. It's creating a whole new value chain for other players, I think. I know there are some people in the messaging industry who are involved in the end-to-end business, but it's more of a large-scale bulk product rather than a value commitment that we're providing. It's a different ballgame. It's more on the bulk SMS place than rather the, and as Sam said, it's very low bit processing, so you're not sending tremendous amount through, and the channels that are going to be provided for the M2M messaging are also going to be costed. They're going to be different costing. So I'm not sure how much that's going to affect the industry. I did leave out one thing before that I probably should mention as well, and that is the issue of voice messaging. I have teenagers, young adults, my family. When they want to communicate with me, they send me voice messages on WhatsApp. They don't text anymore. None of them are texting anymore. Okay. A few years ago, we were all talking about how when, years from now, they're going to come and they're going to want to find out why our generation has big thumbs, right? That's not happening anymore. They're not doing it anymore. The future is going to be in voice messaging. And what are we as messaging companies doing in terms of how we're going to implement that into our value, into what the products that we're offering to our customers? How does it affect the firewalls? And Tim, I think you and I had this conversation. How does it affect the firewalls? It was going to be via voice. Will the voice processing going to be good enough that we're going to know, okay, this is a spam voice call that's going through? Okay, what are we going to do in terms of the CTR for those types of messages? So we mentioned flash calls, but this is a whole new ballgame in terms of where the messaging business is going to be in 5 years from now. So just raising that.
Okay, thank you very much. The last question for everyone, you guys, where is the technology or the changes in our industry, let's say, from now on in 3 years? What do you think, Tim? The last word.
Well, although I've not sort of talked about this piece, I do think RCS penetration is going to be a big change over this next 3 years. I think I probably said that 3 years ago. So my apologies to anyone who
you did. It was 5 years ago, but you did. Yes.
Yeah. However, I'm going to say it again, and again, it was that eternal optimism which keeps on driving me on this one. So I think that is it, and I think it's the great feature of messaging that is that it's actually underused. Now, we're already in all of this industry, but, when you think on your email, I mean, typically I'm getting over 100 emails a day, most of which are spam. I probably get 10 SMSs at the most of which I actually want to read. That's the good news. So its value is that it's underused because it's not been overused. It's not been overdriven. But what that all comes down to, and I think that's again where it's going to be in 3 years, is about the etiquette. I think, we all talk about codes of practice and, what are the right rules? And we've got regulatory enforcement of some things. We've got personal enforcement of others. We've got industry enforcement of others. I think establishing that etiquette that maintains the value of messaging as a channel, whether it's RCS or SMS or WhatsApp or whatever else it happens to be, it's going to be that etiquette that will define the value in 3 years' time.
Okay, thank you very much. What do you think?
I think that SMS is definitely going to stay here. You can have different technologies like RCS or which can add have the value add to the value chain, but SMS is still the most trusted means and effective means of communication to the end users. So yes, two innovations will definitely come in place, and the enterprises will want them in their kitty to showcase that yes, we have different. But yeah, SMS is definitely.
Okay, thank you. Ira?
No, so I worked for a company that was made disruptive technology. We invented the USB flash drive, which changed the world in terms of how you sent out files. And there I learned an important lesson. The first law of disruptive technology is that there will always be another disruptive technology to disrupt the previous disruptive technology. That's the first law. So it's frankly, I can't prophesize. I do know what we need to do in order to make sure that our future keeps getting brighter. And the first thing, and I'll repeat this again, we have to worry about trust in that channel. And we have to make sure to rebuild that trust in that channel through whatever means it takes to do that, because otherwise flash calls Google, Microsoft, Amazon, they're all going to find other ways to do it. The enterprises, the banks, the brands are telling them we need to find a different solution. We work with some of the largest financial institutions on our blockchain sender ID technology, and they have billions of dollars of losses from fixed sender ID, and they get fined from regulators or from bank regulators for not protecting the data properly, and hundreds of millions of dollars. So that's something that we must do. And the second, and I say this at every panel that I talk to, even the ones that I'm not on, we have to make sure to show the value to our end customers and what the value of using these channels does for them, whether in the terms of the ROI from it, or in terms of building up a relationship with their customer, or having conversational dialogue with their customer. If we need to show that value all the time, and it's on us as an industry to make sure that that happens.
Okay, thank you very much. And Sam, last but not least,
I remember
final
about
word?
3 years ago, we had a conversation. You asked me what I thought about RCS versus OTT. And I remember saying, I think RCS, because of the standards are there. And in my opinion, I've got how I hold my hands up and say I think I was a bit wrong, because the way the market's moved over the last 3 years and moving forward is the traffic in the enterprises more and more targeting the SMEs rather than the larger enterprises. I think that's where the growth of the market is going to come from over the next few years. The big issue with that is that the reason SMS is obviously is ubiquitous and RCS isn't, but the for OTTs, when you're targeting the SMEs who operate normally on a national level or smaller scale, OTT applications will operate very widely within one country, and it will make it far more popular for enterprises rather than maybe just SMS, because there's the rich media side of things, and the cost is becoming more and more comparable with SMS. So I think moving forward, we're going to see a lot more innovation from the OTT side. Obviously, SMS, OTPs, and multi-factor authentication remain with SMS, but it's up to the telcos now to start thinking about how to grow their traffic based on the rich media and the omni-channel resale type areas, because SMEs are going to be the key growth area for me over the next few years.
Okay, good. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for this panel, for this very interesting discussion. So would also like to thank you for listening to our words. And with this, I would say goodbye to all of you, also to the audience outside there. Team, thank you very much as well.
Thank you very much.